Hey, thanks for being here. Today I want to do something a little different. Instead of breaking down a bill or talking about a policy framework, I want to talk about my thoughts on AI generally. Not from headlines, not from the hype cycle, just where I've landed about watching this space evolve. And the first thing I want to say is this: AI is one of those technologies that makes people feel like they're living in the future and losing control of it at the same time. That tension is very real. On one hand, AI is genuinely remarkable. You can ask a system to explain a complicated idea, draft something, brainstorm, translate, code. It's like having this weird, always available collaborator. And not in some distant sci-fi way, but right now. And at the same time, there's this underlying unease because it's not always clear how it works, where the boundaries are, where it's going. And I think a lot of the conversation about AI comes down to how people deal with that discomfort. Because some people respond with optimism, right? They see AI as a tool that's going to unlock creativity, accelerate discovery, expand access to knowledge. And I think there's truth to that. AI lowers barriers, it makes it easier to write, to learn, to build things. In a lot of ways, it expands human capability. And I think that's where the optimism is, because of its ability to affect us as people, as individuals. There's a lot of hope there. Other people go in the opposite direction. They see risk everywhere: misinformation, job loss, deepfakes, manipulation, loss of human agency. But where I've landed is somewhere in the middle. I have a little bit of optimism and I have a little bit of caution too. I don't think that AI is inherently liberating, and I don't think that it is inherently dangerous. It's a tool, but it's a tool that operates at a scale and at a speed that we're simply not used to, and that makes a huge difference. One of the biggest questions for me is how AI interacts with human expression, because at the end of the day, a lot of what AI does is generate, organize, and distribute information, and that puts it right in the middle of free speech issues. There's a strong instinct right now to control it, to put guardrails everywhere on what AI can say, what it can generate, who can access it, how people verify themselves. And again, that comes from legitimate concerns. People don't want harm. They don't want kids exposed to things they shouldn't see. They don't want to be misled. But there's a big trade-off that I don't think we talk about clearly enough. When you start building systems that are heavily restricted, whether through design mandates, content filters, or identity requirements, and I'm talking about age verification there, you're not just reducing harm. You're also shaping what people are allowed to access, create, and share. You're shaping the boundaries of expression itself. And that matters a lot, because once those systems are in place, they don't apply to the worst kinds of content. They apply to everything, to satire, to criticism, unpopular ideas, things that are unlawful but uncomfortable or offensive. So one of my concerns with AI isn't just what it can do, it's how we as individuals and as a society respond to it. Whether we treat it as something that needs to be tightly controlled or something that people can be trusted to use. Another thing that I keep coming back to is how much of this conversation is driven by uncertainty. People don't like not knowing. They don't like not being able to predict outcomes. And artificial intelligence as a technology is full of that. There's a chance that you can look at this technology and see your worst fears in it, whether it's existential or your kids. So the instinct is to lock things down early to try to stay ahead of the risks. But there's so much danger in that, because when you regulate a technology before you fully understand it, you're not just preventing harm, you're also shaping its development, sometimes in ways that are really hard to reverse. And historically, we haven't always gotten that balance right. We've seen moments where new forms of communication were treated as threats, like the printing press, radio, even the internet itself. And over time, we've had to recalibrate. I think AI is going to be one of those moments where the first wave of responses is driven by fear and uncertainty. And then over time, we start to figure out where the real risks are and where we have overcorrected. Something else that doesn't get enough attention, in my view, is the role of the individual. Many conversations focus on companies and governments. What should platforms do? What should regulators do? But there's also a question of how people adapt, how we learn to use these tools, how we develop norms around them, how we get better at recognizing what's real, what's manipulated, what's generated. That's not as flashy as regulation, but in my view, it's so much more important because ultimately, technology doesn't exist in the vacuum. It exists with us, in our culture, in our society, and how people interact with it matters. I also think we underestimate how quickly AI is being normalized. What feels novel today won't feel novel in a year or two. It'll just be part of the background, like search engines, like social media. And when that happens, the real question won't be, is AI good or bad? It'll be, how is it regulated into everyday life? Who controls it? What are the default settings? What assumptions are baked into it? But more than that, let's personalize it because this is affecting each and every one of us. The questions are going to be, how is it integrated into your life? How do you control it? What are your default settings? What assumptions are you making? Or what assumptions is it making for you? Because those defaults will shape your behavior. They shape what you see, what they can do, and what you think is possible. So when I think about AI, I just don't think about the technology itself. I think about the system around it, the incentives, the policies, the design choices. And I think a lot of the stakes come down to this. Do we end up with an ecosystem that expands human agency or narrows it? And I don't think we know the answer yet. And I don't think it's predetermined. But I do think that this is one of the moments where the decisions are being made right now are going to have long-term consequences. Not just for innovation, but for expression, for access to information, for how people interact with the digital world. So if there's one thing I'd emphasize, it's this. We should be paying attention, not just to what AI can do, but how we're choosing to shape it. Because that part, that human layer, that's where a lot of the real impact is going to come from. Those are my thoughts, at least for now. I'm sure they'll evolve, just like everything else in this space. Thanks for listening.